Good morning. I'm Sarah Waddle, State Director with AARP in Indiana, and I want to welcome you to this important discussion on common scams in our state. Today we will be speaking with many AARP members across Indiana, and we'll be joined by our special guest from the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of Indiana. In just a moment, you will be able to ask our guests questions about scams to look out for and how you can protect yourself. So start thinking of your questions now. You may also want to grab a pen and paper so that you can take notes because we're going to share lots of good information. By the end of today's call, you should know the warning signs of some of the most common scams and how to avoid becoming a victim. You will know what to do if you are contacted by scammers, and we will share resources on where you can get more information and assistance if you need it. Before we start today, I would like to share that AARP is a nonprofit, nonpartisan social mission organization. We're in your corner fighting on issues that matter to you and your family. The AARP Fraud Watch Network is a nationwide effort to arm people with the tools that they need to spot and avoid scams. We equip consumers with up-to-date knowledge to spot and avoid those scams and connect those targeted by scams with our fraud helpline specialists who provide support and guidance on what to do next. Through the Fraud Watch Network, you can sign up to receive free bi-weekly Fraud Watch alerts, and those are delivered right to your email inbox. And if you're concerned you've been scammed, you can reach a trained volunteer at the AARP Fraud Watch Network helpline at 877-908-3360. I'm going to say it again. If you don't have a PIN yet, I would suggest you go ahead and get one, but I'll say it again, and then we'll say it at the end. Again, the Fraud Watch Network helpline, 877-908-3360. You can also listen to a popular podcast called The Perfect Scam for all you podcaster listeners out there, where law enforcement, professional con artists, and victims discuss the latest scams and how to protect yourself. If you want to learn more about the Fraud Watch Network and these great resources, you can visit aarp.org/fraudwatchnetwork after this call. If you participated in one of our telephone town halls before, you know that they sound a lot like a call-in radio show where you have the opportunity to ask questions of our guests. If you would like to ask a question at any time during this call, you can just press *3 on your telephone keypad, and that's going to connect you with an AARP staff member who will note your name and question and put you in the question queue. Today, we are speaking with the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of Indiana. We are joined by Adam Ekman, an attorney and federal prosecutor with the Department of Justice. His practice focuses on prosecuting white-collar crimes, and he is an elder fraud coordinator for his office. He graduated from the Indiana University McKinney School of Law. After graduation, Adam worked for a law firm in Indianapolis doing business litigation. He then clerked for Judge James Patrick Hanlon, a federal judge in the Southern District of Indiana. He's been a federal prosecutor for 5 years. He's been married for 14, and he has 4 children. So this is your chance to hear from and ask questions of Adam. Again, if you want to ask a question at any time during the call, you can press *3 on your telephone keypad. It's going to connect you to an AARP staff member who will note your name and question and place you in our queue. So the sooner you press *3, the sooner you will be able to ask your question live to our guest. So now that you have all of that great information, let's dive into the discussion with Adam. Adam, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Well, thank you very much. I'm happy to be here. AARP is an organization that has a great reputation, and we're excited to partner with AARP. As Sarah said, I'm an attorney. I'm a federal prosecutor. I do white-collar crimes, and a lot of that is fraud. And fraud is basically just lying to get money. And I'm excited to be here today because much of my day is spent investigating frauds that have already happened, and I have to speak with victims who have lost hundreds or even millions of dollars, and unfortunately sometimes we can catch the people who did it, but getting the money back is a different challenge, and often it's impossible. So the best way to fix that problem is to make sure it never happens in the first place. So each minute I spend hopefully protecting people from fraud is a minute well spent, because it's much easier to stop fraud from happening than to try to get money back once it's already been sent. So I'm happy to be here today.
Awesome. We're happy to have you here. Adam, it sounds like you have a little bit of a presentation for us today about some frauds and scams that you want to update us on.
Yeah, I have a 15, 20-minute presentation I'd like to go over. That the goal of this presentation is to make sure anyone who's listening has the tools they need to make sure they're not a victim of any kind of fraud, any kind of scam. The tools you need to protect yourself so you're not sending that money or sending that information in the first place. So to get started, I'm going to give you 3 tips that will help you with any kind of fraud scam you encounter. 3 tips to prevent yourself from being a victim. And then 2 pieces of practical advice that I think will really help. And then 1 resource that I recommend you reach out to if you're at all feel like you might be a victim. So it's 3, 2, 1. So the 3. The easiest way to make sure you're not a victim of any kind of fraud or any kind of scam is to do these 3 things. It's calm down, slow down, and talk to someone you know. I'm going to talk about why that works here in a minute. So calm down, slow down, and talk to someone you know. That is the best tool for fighting fraud and scams because it undoes what almost all scams have in common. They have an emotional hook, a sense of urgency, and they want to create a sense of isolation. Those are the 3 things fraudsters try to do. And I'm going to take them apart one by one right now. Let's start with the emotional hook. Fraudsters want you not to think with your mind, not to reason through what they're saying, but to act out of emotion, because that's how they get their most money. That's how they're able to scam people and make sure that people are victims. And the emotional hook comes in a variety of ways. First, we see a lot of scams that the emotional hook comes from the emotion of fear. So the scam will instill fear in you right away, and they want you to send money to try to fix it. So what does that look like? It might be what we call grandparent or friend in need scams. So this will be a call from a number you don't recognize, but it'll be someone claiming to be a grandson or someone at a hospital where your grandson or granddaughter is being kept. And the emotional hook will go something like your grandson was on spring break in Mexico or overseas. He got in an accident. Now they need money for surgery. The surgery is in the next 24 hours, and if he doesn't get this surgery, he could die. Well, that's a pretty big emotional hook right there. I would be scared. Anyone getting that call would immediately feel fear, and that's what they want. Because when you're scared, when you're thinking out of fear, you're not thinking rationally, and that's what they want. So any kind of call, any kind of email which trying to instill fear, whether it's a grandson in injury or maybe the IRS calling saying you owe tens of thousands of dollars, or another very common scam that's really picked up in the last 2 years or so is getting pop-ups or getting emails saying your computer has a virus or your computer has been hacked or your bank accounts have been hacked or your identity has been stolen. Those are all trying to get you to feel fear. And when you feel that happening, you get that call, you see that email. Remember the very first tip, calm down. Take a few minutes, take a beat. Even if it's all true, which it's not, you still should have time to stop and think about what to do. So if you feel that fear coming on, you got to calm down and reset. The next type of emotional hook that these scammers try to get is the emotion of hope, kind of the opposite of the last one. So this emotional hook is you're about to be rich, or you have money coming to you, and it's coming your way, and it's tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, or maybe even millions of dollars. That might be a call saying you've won the lottery. It might be a call from an investment banker saying your investments have quadrupled, something like that. The most common we see is lottery. So what happens here is you might get a call saying you've won the lottery, or you've gotten an email and saying you've won the lottery, and the one catch is, darn it, you have to pay these fees or these taxes up front, and then as soon as you pay the taxes, you'll get all the money. So you've won, let's say, $3 million. All you have to do is pay $10,000 in fees, and the money's yours. Well, this is what will happen. Once you pay the $10,000, they'll say, okay, now it's taxes of $6,000. Now it's shipping of this $1,000, and it'll never end until your money's gone. And this is working because you have hope. You're thinking with your emotions. I've won the lottery. I'd be a fool not to pay $10,000 in order to get $10 million. So again, what do? You feel that excitement. You feel that hope. Calm down and think. Did you even enter the lottery? Do you remember filling out any kind of sweepstakes forms? And even if you did, the way lotteries work is you pay your fees, you pay your taxes out of your winnings, or you report them on your taxes later that year. It is a scam to have to pay money up front to get money in the back end. That's not how they work. That is always a scam. So never, ever pay money up front to get money on the back end, even if you think you've won a lottery or sweepstakes or some sort of raffle, but they want you to start thinking with emotion. So remember, the tip is to calm down. The last emotional hook that they use is the emotion of love. So this will take a shape of you meet someone online, you chat, and you find you start really liking them, you build a relationship, and you might talk to them for months or even years, and you think you have a real friend in this person. But somewhere along the line, they'll ask for money. And it'll be money to come home to see you. It'll be money to help their son. It'll be money because they are what we see a lot is they claim to be in the military and something has happened abroad, that their money's tied up or they can't get money moved. All of that is targeting, wants you not to think logically, but to think with your emotions. Here it's love. So my big tip here is always calm down, but also remember, if you haven't laid eyes on this person, they might not be what you're thinking. Their profile picture might be of a handsome young man or someone in military outfit, but it could be, and it probably is, someone in Vietnam who's doing this scam thousands of times over and over again, or someone in China or someone in India who looks nothing like that profile picture. And if you were to stop and think logically, you'd probably see through that. But if you're letting your emotions get the best of you, that's when the problems come in. So those are the emotional hooks that the fraudsters are trying to get you hooked into their scam. So what do you do to defeat the fraudsters? What do you do to beat these scammers? The answer is calm down. Don't think with your emotions. Don't get so excited about the lottery or so scared about your grandson or so wrapped up in your romance that you're not thinking things through. So think things through logically. And if that takes a few hours, great. But whatever it takes to calm down, that's the first way you defeat these scams. The second thing that all fraudsters will do is a sense of urgency. They will somehow create in you the impression that this has to be acted on right now, that don't hang up the phone, don't click out of this email, you need to act now. So maybe they'll say we need money right away for a surgery. Maybe they'll say your account is hacked and you need to click this link to move your money out. Or maybe it's someone you met online and you've known them for months, but they're asking for money right away for a hospital visit or for someone in need. If ever you get a message asking for money and there's an urgency right away, no exception, slow down. It is probably a scam. Even people who are legitimate, they can take time and process what you need. There's no reason to think or act right away. So if anyone says you have 24 hours, you have 48 hours, you have 2 hours, red flag should be going up in your mind right away saying, hold on, this doesn't sound right. I remember that presentation from the AARP call I did that said to look out for this. I'm going to slow down. I'm going to take a day or 2 days or a week to think about this. And I guarantee you, if you take a few days to think about it, you'll see that something's not adding up. So don't feel like you have to act right away. Banks don't close accounts with 24 hours notice. The IRS doesn't seize funds with 48 hours notice. That's just not how it works. And hospitals, even hospitals abroad, operate on people who need surgeries. They don't hold off life-giving care for a grandparent to send money. So you have time. Take it and slow down. The last thing that you'll see fraudsters do, so there's 3 things they do. They try to get an emotional hook. They try to make you act out of urgency. The last thing they'll try to do is to isolate you. And they don't want you to talk to anyone else about this scam. So what they'll frequently do is make up some reason why you can't tell anyone, or it's embarrassing. So what they'll see here is maybe you get a pop-up saying your computer's been hacked and they found these files. And they're files that if your pastor or your priest or your neighbor found out were on your computer, they'd be scandalized. But of course it's not true. But they say that because it's so embarrassing you won't want to talk to someone. So that is another big red flag. And as I have little kids at home, and I tell them, if anyone tells you not to talk to a grown-up about this, that's when you absolutely should talk to a grown-up. I say the same advice to anyone in this situation. If you find anyone telling you, keep it secret, don't tell anyone, I find this embarrassing, or you're tempted to not tell someone, that's when you absolutely should tell someone. So the tip here is, think of someone in your life, someone you know, and when I say know, I mean you have laid eyes on them. They are a human being you have personally met, that you have their number and you're sure it's their number. You could call, you could meet up with, and talk to them about the problem. And all it has to do is, it could be as simple as, hey, I got this email. I was thinking about sending money, but I heard in this AARP presentation that I should talk to someone, so I wanted to run it by you, make sure it sounds right. Children are great for this. Spouses can do this. Friends, neighbors, any human being that you personally know and have laid eyes on. Talk to them, especially if you've been told not to talk to someone. That's when you absolutely want to talk to someone. And it doesn't have to be a long conversation. It can just be 30 seconds saying, I got this phone call today. I told them I'd call them back. I hung up, and I gave you a call. What do you think about it? That's a great way to do it. So I promised 3 tips to defeat almost all types of fraud. They are calm down. Don't think with your emotions. Don't act out of your emotional impulse. Slow down. Take an hour, take a few days, take as much time as you need to think this through. And then finally, before ever sending money, take 30 seconds, 5 minutes, talk to someone you know, run it by them, see what they think. A 5-minute conversation can save you tens of thousands, if not millions of dollars. You don't want to lose that money. An investment in a 5-minute conversation with someone you know is a very good use of your time.
Hey, Adam.
Now, I do want – yes.
sorry to cut you off here. I just want to put a plug in. If you aren't taking notes, you should be, because there's some really good stuff here. But also, if you have any questions for Adam, we need you to press *3 on your telephone keypad so that you can get your question into the question queue, and we have those lined up and ready to go for Adam as soon as he's almost done. Again, it's *3 on your telephone keypad for any questions that you have for Adam regarding frauds and scams and the information that he is presenting now. Thank you for listening to this commercial break. So I'm going to turn it back over to you, Adam. I just wanted to make sure that folks knew that they needed to press *3 so that they could get their questions in. Thank you.
Sure, and I have about maybe 5 more minutes. The one thing I wanted to add, so the interruption was good, because I was speaking about sending money, and absolutely everything I said applies about sending money, but be equally careful with your personal identifying information. So your Social Security number is the number one thing here. Don't share your Social Security number with people. Guard it like you would guard your own money. Okay, so those are the 3 things you can do to defeat fraud scams. I have 2 pieces of practical advice based on the many cases I've seen, that if people just followed these two pieces of advice, a lot of what crosses my desk would have been prevented. So the number one thing is, if anyone ever, and I'm saying anyone and I'm saying ever, very broad terms, asks you to send them money in unusual ways, so gift cards, buy a bunch of gift cards, or send me gold, or send me silver, or worst of the worst, cryptocurrency like Bitcoin or Ethereum. If anyone's asking for money in those unusual ways, run away, do not do it, abandon ship, whatever it takes, don't send that money. Because fraudsters have evolved. They've realized that many times people send money by check or by wire, and then a few hours go by or a day goes by and their sense hits them. And a lot of times we can stop that. As long as you don't waste time in reporting it. If you sent a check at 9 a.m. and then by noon you realize, oh, that was dumb, that was probably a scam. Well, a lot of times we can stop that. Well, fraudsters were getting tired of seeming to get money only to have banks call it back or cancel checks. So now they've moved on to asking for Amazon gift cards, Visa gift cards, gold. There's been reports in the news and cases we've worked on in our office where people were giving gold to scammers. So I'll say this statement again. If anyone asks you to pay them in any of these unusual ways, just stop. Don't do it. Don't do it no matter what. If it's someone you love and they're asking you to pay them in these ways and you feel like you know them, at bare minimum say, I'd like to write you a check. That will stop a lot of scammers right there. Don't send money in these unusual ways. So that's the first practical tip. The second thing is, if ever you get an email that asks you to call a number or click a link, be very careful. I would go as far as to say, don't call the number, never click the link. Let me give you an example. So this happens to me all the time. I get emails to my email account. It looks like it's a PayPal receipt for, let's say, a $1,000 cell phone. I get that, and I say, I didn't order a $1,000 cell phone. Someone must have hacked my account, and now they're buying things. Well, that's what the scammers want me to think, because in that email is a link to check my PayPal account. I click that link, I put in my username and password, and bam, now the scammers have my username and password to PayPal. They got exactly what they wanted. Or you get an email from your bank that says money is something suspicious is happening. Log into your bank. You click the link. Now the scammers can log into your bank because they have your username and password. So the tip here is, do not click links. Do not call numbers in emails. Now, let's say you get an email that does cause you to get concerned from your bank or from PayPal. What should you do? Well, the simple thing is just close the email, get on a search engine like Google, go to PayPal.com or Amazon.com using a bookmark that you trust or using the website listed on Google. type in your information there. Then you can see what orders have been placed in your account, and you can verify what's in the email. So there are occasions where your bank might notify you that something suspicious is happening, but the best way to check that is click out of the email, log into your bank using your bookmark that you trust, and see what's going on that way. Or if it's a phone number and you want to call, by all means call, but type in IRS phone number into Google or Chase Bank phone number into Google and use that number. Do not use numbers listed in emails, because what will happen if you call that number is it'll be a scammer who will somehow, in a roundabout way, say the solution is to transfer money out of your account. You don't want that. So the three, to review where we've kind of come from, the 3 tips to defeat all scams are calm down, slow down, and talk to someone you know. My 2 pieces of practical advice are never send money in unusual ways like gift cards, gold, or cryptocurrency, and never click links or use phone numbers in emails. Instead, close out of the email and use Google or a bookmark or something you trust to figure out the real phone number or the real website that you can trust. Okay, the last thing I'm going to say, I work for the Department of Justice. We have an elder fraud hotline ourselves, and I know AARP has a wonderful hotline too. I'm not trying to steer any business away from AARP, but if you want 2 resources, we have one. It's this is again probably an opportunity to write it down. It's 1-833, the word fraud, and then the number 11. So it's 1-833-372-8311. So to give you a little bit of homework, write that down, put that in your phone. And the next piece of homework I would give you is sometime today, when you're thinking about your day, think of the one person you will call whenever you think of something suspicious is happening. Already have that person made up in your mind. Maybe it's a son or a daughter or a neighbor, a human being. So put this number in your phone and think of that one person you will talk to. And hopefully if you take this advice and the advice I've given you throughout this call, you will not become a victim. I'll never have to give you the unfortunate piece of news that your money's gone. And hopefully you'll never encounter me in my job and you'll never be a victim. So that's the goal of this call. And I'm happy to take any questions anyone has on the line.
Thank you so much, Adam. That was some really good stuff. And I was able, the 3-2-1, that was really helpful and some good tricks there for folks. Folks, now's your time to ask Adam anything you want about frauds and scams. He's the guy that knows it all and why we have him here. Let's learn from him. *3 on your telephone keypad is the way to do that. It will connect you to an AARP staff person who will take your question and put you in our question queue. Real quick, though, I'm just curious, can you give maybe like 1 or 2 real-life examples of things that are most prominent that come across your desk? Is there something that's most prominent here in the state of Indiana?
Sure. 2 very prominent things we see a lot. One I didn't have a chance to touch on is a lot of people, when they are scammers, they can't have bank accounts in the United States. Banks are too good at detecting when someone's scamming people. So what they do is they send money to people who do have accounts and ask them to move it on to where it needs to go. So we see a lot of older folks who have money coming into their accounts and going right back out, and they think they're helping someone. They are helping someone. They're helping a scammer. So I should add, if anyone asks you to move money for them in any way, they'll say, and you can even keep some for yourself, they'll say, and you think, well, okay, this is a good way to make a few $100s. Stop right there. That is a scam. Scammers need people in the United States who have good backgrounds, who have solid bank accounts that won't get closed to move money for them, so don't move money for them. The other big trend we've seen really throughout the Midwest we've seen in Illinois, Kentucky, Ohio, is fraudsters asking for money in gold. So what happens here is that you'll get an email or a call saying your bank account has been hacked. Your money is not safe. Someone could take all the money out of your bank account at any time. This is the FBI talking to you, and they'll say the FBI has a safe way to store money for you. Just take your money out of your account, buy gold, and an FBI agent will come to your house to take your gold, and it will keep it in safekeeping at the FBI. That sounds crazy, I know, but they build up trust, and luckily in our country, people trust the FBI as they should. So when they hear FBI, they are immediately trusting, but it's not the FBI. And FBI will never ask you to put your money in gold. The FBI does not keep money for anyone, for any reason, even victims, and they certainly don't keep gold. So that's where I go back to that practical piece of advice. If anyone's asking you to take your money and put it into gold, just stop right there. That's a scam. You do not need to put your money in gold. And the reason, unfortunately, there's little we can do for this is once the money's in gold and it's in that trunk of that car and we can't stop the car, it's gone. It's probably been melted down or shipped overseas or sent to China. So unlike a bank transfer where sometimes we can undo it, we can't undo you putting gold in someone's trunk. So that's why you never want to do that.
Good stuff. Thanks for sharing that. I'm going to go to our callers because we have some questions in here for you. The first person we're going to go to is Mary. Mary, do I have you live on the phone?
Yes.
What is your question for Adam today?
Well, thank you for this information, Adam. That's very helpful. I'm learning a lot. But I wanted to ask a question. I get almost daily texts about my toll fines, and what I do is I just click report junk and delete it, but I keep getting them. And I have not had fraud happen to me, so I feel like I don't want to call the fraud hotlines that you've given us the numbers for, but I would like to call in or go online or text somehow to prevent these from going out to me further and so forth, not going out to anybody else as well. Is there some place I can report these suspected frauds even though I'm not a victim yet or ever?
Sure. A couple of things. When you can report junk and you can also block the sender. So make sure you're doing both of those. They're probably hopping around using a bunch of different numbers, so that might have limited help. But make sure you're doing both, blocking and reporting junk. Second thing is I think you can put your number on Do Not Call list. You probably have already done that, but if you haven't, you could try that. I don't think scammers really honor that. The third thing, and this is up to you if you want to do, you could report it as fraud, the FBI, so you could call like the FBI and report fraud. That might be doing more than you need to, but the FBI does keep track of these numbers. So let's say a number ending in 457, you report it as scam, and later in Oregon someone is a victim of the fraud scam. The FBI can say, okay, they reported they were scammed by a number that ended in 457. Who else has reported fraud by this number? And they can get a better sense of the scope. So that's kind of going above and beyond, but it does help detect fraud and catch people, and when they are caught, figure out the scope. But honestly, when I get that, I do exactly what you do and try to move on. The fact that you're getting so much, I get it some, but not at the extent you're talking. I would maybe think about whether your number is being listed somewhere that's being shared with a bunch of people. So be mindful of you never want to provide your phone number to any kind of unsavory organization or some organization you're not entirely sure is legitimate. So just be mindful of that, and if you have already done that, maybe try to undo that by somehow deleting that account or something like that.
Okay. And that FBI fraud hotline number, is that 877 number we got at the beginning, or is there a different one?
You could call that one, and they'll. I've never called it myself, but I think they'll take you where you need to go. They'll walk you through what you need.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Mary. And I think just kind of looking down through the questions, there's kind of a theme about, can I get myself off of these calls and texts? Is there anything that I can do to make them stop? And it sounds like, Adam, we can block as much as we can, and we can, report. But outside of that, it's really just ignoring them. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, and to elaborate on the last point I gave, your number somehow, if you're getting a lot of these numbers, your number has somehow been shared with an unsavory organization or someone that knows this person is a good target. So try to be mindful of who and what organizations you share your phone number with. And I could add, the worst case scenario is you could always change your phone number and use a different one. If you have, a handful of people you talk to regularly, you could just send them a text saying, I've gotten so many of these calls, it's getting overwhelming. I'm starting afresh with a new number, and then give them that number. That'll be great. But you don't want to get a new number and then fall right back to where you started. So if you do get a new number, be very careful of who you share that number with, and only share it with people you really trust.
Very good. Thank you for that. All right. I'm going to go to Diane in Valparaiso. Diane,
yes.
Do I have you on the line? What's your question for Adam?
First, thanks, Adam. The information has been very good. Couple questions. One, I have a virus program, and it's told me that my name is popped up on the deep web. And so I bought whatever product they wanted me to buy because it's the company I have my virus program with. So that's marketing, not scam. But how can you tell if you've been hacked and they're out there, they're actively combing through your files? Is there anything I could check somewhere in my computer that says, whoops, this is going on or has gone on, and I can I just don't want to have to check every bank account every day to see if there's been activity,
Sure. I'll give you a couple of practical tips. One is, unfortunately, a lot of big companies have been hacked, so credit reporting companies. So scammers can go on and see your personal identifying information, like your name, your address, your phone number, sometimes your social security number, your login stuff. So if someone is reporting your personal information or your password to this website is on the deep web, that's very believable. So be mindful of that. And the easiest way to prevent that is turning on what's called two-factor authentication. What that is, and I strongly recommend doing this at bare minimum for all your bank accounts and any email accounts you use. And what that does is it requires 2 steps when you log in the first time from any new device. So let's say you turn it on. What will happen is, let's say you turn it on for your bank account. You'll type in your username and password, and then it'll say, okay, we have your cell phone in our files. We're going to send it a text with 6 numbers. You get that text, you send us back the 6 numbers. So that way it knows it's you. And then, of course, sometimes you have settings that only do that rarely or every 2 weeks, or you can adjust that. But that way, if someone has your account, they have all your identifying information, but they don't physically hold your cell phone, they cannot get into your accounts because you'll get that text with those codes and you won't share that, so they can't get in. The biggest warning there is, of course, if you ever get a security code pop up on your phone, that might be someone trying to get into your account. Do not share that code with anyone. Even if you think it's the bank, even if it's someone you trust, and they say, okay, you're on the phone with someone and they're walking you through, what's the security code? That's a big, big red flag. Don't do that. Never share the security code. The other thing I wanted to touch on is what's very, very, very rare is that there's a hacker actively in your computer going through your files and looking at files you have saved. I would go as far as to say that sounds like a scam. That hackers don't. That's just not an efficient way for a hacker to spend their time. They don't do that type of scam. So if someone tells you, a hacker is in your computer looking through your files, I would be leery of that. That sounds like a scam because that's not the operation they typically follow, because that's not a good use of their time.
Good stuff. Thanks for the question. And there was a question in the queue, and it disappeared right before my very eyes, but I'm going to ask it anyways because I think it was a very good one. So Howard, I'm going to ask your question for you. What happens to these scammers? Why, do we catch them? Do they go to jail? What happens to these people?
So the short answer is we try to put people in jail as best we can. Now, a lot of the scammers are operating out of countries in which it's kind of complicated, but even if we catch them and figure out who they are, there's nothing we can do about it because the country doesn't have a fancy word, extradition, which means they won't send us criminals. Even if American citizens are victims and we can prove it, they won't help us. So Nigeria is big, China is big. So I'll say, unfortunately, some of the time you figure out who did the call, you trace it all back, and lo and behold, it's a call center in China. Unfortunately, that's a dead end for us. And sometimes we can get, the money back because they bank with Chase, they bank with Fifth Third. Any of these big reputable banks have tools in place to help their customers out. And I've even seen times where banks take a loss in order to keep a customer. So that's why I strongly recommend, as soon as you think you're a victim of fraud, call some law enforcement agency, FBI or the police, and tell your bank, that in the next 10 minutes, because they might be able to do things to help you out. But so in terms of getting the money back, we have some resources. In terms of catching the people, we have limited resources because a lot of it's overseas. But the good news is like I said before, there are people, once they are scammed, especially if they're picking up gold, just 4 or 5 months ago, someone here near Indianapolis was scammed out of gold, put gold in someone's car, and they were a victim. Well, we were able to set up a sting operation in which we sent fake gold, fake money, and we were able to catch the person picking them up. That person has been charged. So the people operating in the United States, when they're in the United States, even if they're not citizens, we try to put them in jail. We try to get them in jail for a long time. That's what we have there. But when it goes overseas, sometimes those overseas actors, there's very little we can do.
Yeah, it's challenging. I think, to me, that's why it's ultra important that we protect ourselves, just because there's not a good path, to get justice always on the other end. And so, these kinds of tips and being aware, it's why it's very, very important. I'm going to go to Sharon in Seymour. Sharon has a question. Sharon, do I have you live on the line?
Yes.
What's your question for Adam?
My question has to do with phone calls that we get often, and whenever I answer, it's a person who sounds foreign, and they say, this is Medicare calling, and I have this trust issue with calls like that, and so I never let them finish. I always disconnect. But is that a fraud or is that legitimate? Do you have any idea?
I think your impulse is correct. It's probably a fraud. Medicare, and I'll broaden this, just Medicare, Social Security, the IRS, they don't just rely on calls. They send letters. And letters I have no problem with because there's no emotional hook, there's no sense of urgency, there's no sense of isolation. So fraudsters don't tend to use letters, and because everything I explained earlier they can't do. So I've told people in the past who really have trouble hanging up on Medicare or Social Security to say, please send me a letter, and just hang up. If that makes you feel better, and you can I'm fine with saying interrupt them and saying, if this is an urgent matter, please send me a letter, and hanging up. It's probably a scam because they can send letters, and the IRS has human beings that they can send to your house. They know. I should start by saying non-scammers, real government agencies know where you live, and they can send someone out. The IRS doesn't just take money. I don't think Social Security doesn't just withhold money because you didn't answer a call. That's just not how they operate their businesses. So I would say don't feel bad about not taking the call. Don't feel bad about hanging up in the call. And if you do feel bad, then just ask them to send a letter. And if you do those things, I think you should be good.
All right. Thanks for that. It's a good one. And those government agency, I think everybody's gone the rounds with the IRS and the Social Security. And so just the letter, I think, is the best answer. Ask for the letter, expect a letter if they're going to communicate with you that way. And just be real careful with anybody saying that they're from a government agency. A lot of questions in my queue, and I'm just going to kind of ask a broad one about it, related to crypto. What is it? What do we need to be concerned about?
Sure. Cryptocurrency is a way of sending money that is permanent, undoable. It can't be undone, and there are a variety of cryptocurrencies. I will start by just saying the number one we see people asking for is Bitcoin, and that's probably the most popular, but there's other ones. So scammers like Bitcoin because once someone sends Bitcoin, there's no possible mathematical way to undo it. So if you were to wire someone, let's say I bank at Chase, you bank at Huntington, and I send you $200, and then you say, oh, I don't need that anymore, we can cancel that, and these banks can undo that. Well, if you send someone 200 Bitcoin or $200 worth of Bitcoin, you can't. There's no way to undo that, no matter what, and it's permanent and it's forever. So I had a case in which someone was being scammed. There are Bitcoin ATMs, which that is a huge red flag. If you ever find yourself asked to go to a Bitcoin ATM, run away as fast as you can, because the way that works is you put cash in, and the Bitcoin goes to whatever account you type in, and then once you put that cash in, once the money is in that Bitcoin ATM, it is gone forever. We can't get it back. So never send money by Bitcoin simply because you can't undo it. I'll say that like the IRS, any business, there is no business on earth, there's no government agency, there's no person who will only accept payment in Bitcoin. That is a sign of a scam. All government agencies, all businesses will accept payment in another form. So if you're being asked to send Bitcoin, they want to do that because they know you're going to regret it, and you want to undo it, and they want to stop you from undoing it. So stay away from Bitcoin, stay away from Ethereum, anything like that, any kind of cryptocurrency.
Thanks for that. I think it's popping up more and more, and I'm not sure folks always have a clear understanding. I know I don't. I know I have learning to do about what it all is and what it all means, for sure. So I am going to just take the liberty of asking the last question here as we wrap it up, Adam. And it's really, we kind of talked about a lot of these scams come through technology, right? And if we are maybe someone who isn't super comfortable with technology, but we know we need to be paying attention within our technology about, scams and frauds, what can we do to help ourselves become better, just awareness with our technology? Do you have, suggestions for people you can count on or places you can go? Is it family members? Like, what can people do to help with the technology piece and making sure that they're not doing anything they shouldn't be doing through their technology?
Yeah, I would say the biggest tip there would be think about someone in your life, and I'll say a human being that you have laid eyes on. So not someone you met online, not someone you've met through the phone, that you think has a good handle on it. And I don't think you need to have an expert understanding on the latest RAM and available in computers or how smartphone software works. It just takes a basic level. But if you're at all unsure and you feel like that's a vulnerability, think about someone in your life, and maybe a grandson or grandchild or a son or a daughter, someone like that, maybe a younger person who maybe is a little more tech savvy than you are, that you could just talk to them about an issue. And I would say this loops back to one of my pieces of advice. If ever someone's asking you for your identifying information, they're asking you to move money for them, they're asking you to send money or wire money, and there's a technology component to it, find that person that we talked about earlier and talk to them about it and say, okay, they asked for crypto. I've heard of cryptocurrency, but I don't know what that is, and educate me, and they can explain it. And then I think when they explain it, you'll see, okay, now I get why they want me to send Bitcoin. Or if they're asking, they're saying your computer has this type of virus, or they talk about the deep web, or they talk about dark web, you don't know what these things are, you can certainly keep the advice I said so far, and you should be safe. But you can always talk to someone about that and learn from that human being about it, because that seems to be the best way to make sure you're not a victim.
Absolutely. And, with that, we are coming up on the hour. I would like to say on behalf of AARP Indiana and the AARP Fraud Watch Network, we do want to thank you all for taking part in today's call. As we do close our conversation, I'd like to end with this thought. Scam artists are out there, and they're looking for new ways to scam their victims, but you have the power to protect yourself. If you can spot a scam, you can stop a scam. Earlier, I said I would share the Fraud Watch Network web address and telephone numbers with you one more time, so let me do that. For the Fraud Watch Network, you can visit aarp.org/fraudwatchnetwork. Again, this is aarp.org/fraudwatchnetwork. On that website, you will find fact sheets on government imposter scams and a range of other scams out there. And if you think you have fallen victim or need assistance, you can call the AARP Fraud Watch Network helpline at 877-908-3360. And as Adam said earlier, all of these resources are out there. It doesn't matter which one you call. Just call one to get help if you think you need it. So I do hope you learned something new today about scams and tips to help protect yourself. We apologize if we weren't able to answer your question directly. We do want to thank you all for participating in this discussion and these important topics. And I also want to thank our special guest, Adam Ekman. I'd like to personally thank Adam for joining us today. And as we near the end of our call, I'd like to ask him if he has any closing comments he'd like to share. Adam?
Yep, I'm just going to reiterate that, remember, it's calm down, slow down, talk to someone you know, never send money in unusual ways, don't click links or use phone numbers and emails, and then use one of these phone numbers. And remember, it's always easier to just make sure you're not a victim of a scam rather than trying to get it back after you've become a scam victim. If you do all those things, you'll be safe, you'll be protected, and you don't have to worry about any of these things we talked about today. So thanks for letting me be a part of this call, and thanks for all the AARP does to help protect older folks in our community. We do appreciate it.
All right, Adam, thank you once again. We apologize if we were not able to answer your question live. If you do stay on the line, you will be able to leave us a voicemail with your question or comment. You can also obtain valuable information from AARP Fraud Watch Network Helpline, again, 877-908-3360, AARP.org, Fraud Watch Network. Thanks, everybody. Have a good rest of your day. Bye-bye.